This week on MS Refresh, this is our first episode of the Microsoft 365 Roadmap Recap, where we'll cover the newly posted and soon-to-be items from Microsoft's roadmap, plus Microsoft Purview and Microsoft Entra are each a thing that nobody asked for. All that and more, this is the MS Refresh Show. Hi there, and welcome to the Matt and Sean 365 Refresh Show. This is episode 61 for the work week of June 6th, 2022, and our first roadmap recap episode coming to you from the East Coast. My name is Matt Wade.
And coming from the void, this is Sean Bugler.
Borrowed that from John Oliver. He just got rid of his.
Yeah, I couldn't find any thin, wiry glasses like him, so I'm the Elvis Costello John Oliver.
Oh yeah, there you go. That's good, actually. Those are definitely Costello glasses. What's good with you? Anything new?
So many things, Matt. Since we have been gone, I have gotten married. This is my placeholder ring because the amount of time between us saying, "Hey, we should just do this," and doing it was not long enough to get the actual ring. So that should be here in a couple weeks. We've been together 7 years. It's not, I mean, you know this. Kelly and I have been together for 7
I was going to say,
years.
is it Kelly? I don't know. For all I know.
Kelly.
It's not like you posted it online or anything.
No, yeah, we just got the photos back, so we're gonna do like the official. We had to wait for the good photos.
Yeah, no, I hear you. I am also a photo snob. I know exactly what you mean by that. But congratulations, man.
I appreciate that. No, so we had a small ceremony at San Francisco City Hall, which is a beautiful, ornate.
Yes.
It's just gorgeous.
Yeah. It really is.
So it was just us, our sisters who live in the area, and then a friend of hers is the witness. But it was great. Really nice ceremony. Cool. Our officiant was a judging by the accent, a British gentleman whose name was, I swear I'm not making this up, George Lucas.
No kidding. I love it. And you're just like, oh, just the cherry on top.
I was like, nobody's going to believe me when I tell this story. So I'm immortalizing it here so I can reference it a couple years from now.
Good work.
Yeah. So we got married. We went to New York. We had a wonderful time in New York. We got back on May 30th or May 29th, which was the day before Memorial Day. And then on May 30th, Memorial Day, we moved, which is why I'm coming to you live from an incredibly sparse space because I am still figuring out how to decorate this office.
There you go.
So for now, you get white wall.
But you have an office now.
I do. Yeah, it's a shared office. Kelly is.
I want to know if your background photo is going to always be the bedroom from the old apartment.
I was thinking about it because we did take that picture that we were using as the temporary placeholder.
Yes, I think you should.
And then I got a new shiny webcam. I'm testing out this thing called the Opal C1, which is this fancy like AI powered webcam. No immediate feedback outside of it. Seems fun so far. But yeah, that's everything happening in my world. No big deal. How are you?
I'm good. So I threw my back out and was on basically bed rest for a full week while you were out gallivanting in New York City. I am somewhat recovered and had tickets to the Coldplay concert at MetLife Stadium last night in New Jersey.
Jealous.
And just pushed through and did it. And it was fantastic and worth it. My back right now is perhaps not so much loving me, but that's okay. It's all about the life.
And you told me in the pre-show that you actually got reservations to the most exclusive restaurant in New York City.
Yeah, so a friend of mine went down with me. She was my date for Coldplay, like from now moving forward. And we got back to our hotel. We stayed at a hotel right by Penn Station, so it was easy to get the train back. And I said, there's a nice ramen place that's still open. It's like midnight-ish, but it was open till 1 or 2. And I had been kind of joking about a taco place that was sort of nearby as well called, I don't know if you ever heard of it. It's called Taco Bell Cantina, which is essentially boozy Taco Bell. And we get back to the hotel and I was like, so you want to do ramen? And she's like, I don't know. I've never had ramen before. She goes, are you joking about Taco Bell? And I was like, no, I wasn't. So we can go there. Of course, it was steps away versus ramen was like three long blocks. And it was like, yeah,
sure.
Taco Bell it is. Let me get that cheesy gritty crunch.
I'm all about it. Now, usually when I go to Taco Bell, I get the box. which is, they're like combination of things
Oh yeah.
for like $5-6. Although here in the Bay Area with inflation, it's like $7.25. But
Still acceptable.
but we prevail.
Yep. So long story short, I
Um,
am still just a child inside a man's body.
Sure. No, I
Yep.
respect it. I'm all about Team Baja Blast.
Oh yes, absolutely. All right, good. I'm glad to hear that actually. So this is probably worth the right point to remind people that we are doing the new format moving forward here. So the first week of the month, we're going to be talking about what's on the roadmap, what's new in the recent month, and then what's due this month, and we'll break it out by app. And then we're going to dive into Microsoft Teams specifically next week. So we won't talk about Teams today because there's just too much to talk about always. The next guest will be joining us the third week of this month. And then actually, you have some really good Power Platform stuff to talk about.
There was
At the end
so
of the
much
month.
cool stuff that they talked about at Build. So same as you, we're not going to be talking about much of the Power Platform here today. We'll throw to a little bit, tease a little bit of it after the news here, but yeah, a lot of really cool stuff that was announced at Build that I'm really, really excited to talk about.
Yeah, same. So why don't we kick off to the news then?
Let's do it.
This is the news.
Here are some new Outlook items that were added to the roadmap in the last month. Additional reactions in email, including love, laugh, and cry, presumably eat is on the way, are due in August. Microsoft Find Time is finally becoming a native Outlook feature called Meeting Polls and will be included by default, finally, with Outlook starting in August. Outlook is also getting a notifications pane in July. That's next month. So you know when you've received an app mention or an email reaction like a thumbs up, which is way better than what I was worried they were going to do, which is send you an email every single time. And here are some items to expect this month. Microsoft Loop components in email, the first use of Loop outside of Microsoft Teams, which means the first time that Loop is going to be useful to organizations like mine that don't use Microsoft Teams. A personal bookings page will let people schedule time with you, offering a native competitor to Calendly. And I'm really excited to see what that looks like. The app bar is finally rolling out with mail, calendar, contacts, and to-do moving to a left side app bar from the bottom left. As many of you, this has already been available. But for those of you that have not yet gotten it, you will receive it this month. You'll also be able to indicate in a meeting RSVP whether you are attending virtually or in person, particularly useful for those organizations that are finally jumping off the cliff and bringing people back into the office. Jumping over to SharePoint. SharePoint has a few new items on the roadmap, both due this month. List items in the calendar view will be able to be dragged and dropped to new dates and times, which is very natural and intuitive functionality. We're glad to see it. And navigation links can be set to open in a new tab in SharePoint, which is huge, especially for those individuals that stick to the traditional construct of external links open in a new tab, internal links stay within the same window. And here are some upcoming deliverables to expect this month, including iOS commenting in Microsoft Lists and scoping controls for pages, sites, lists, and libraries for users to search faster within a specified scope. Let's turn our attention to Stream. Microsoft Stream is finally getting some real deliverables. The new web app is due in September and will include ways for you to manage title, description, thumbnail, chapters, and auto-generated transcripts. That's actually really good to know. I just got a question about the thumbnail earlier today. It cannot come soon enough. And due this month, Teams meeting recordings will now have markers specific to you that indicate when you joined and left a meeting so you know which parts you haven't seen. Over to OneDrive, there are a couple of notable OneDrive updates due this month. The Manage Access experience is going to get more details and options, which is likely a blessing and a curse given how hard it is to find and use as it is. When you add a shortcut to OneDrive for a folder in Teams, SharePoint, or someone else's OneDrives, you'll now be able to rename the folder. So this is going to be a really big deal again, because as you're adding things, adding bookmarks, it can be visually really confusing. So this is going to go a long way to helping you to curate your own personal experience. I only got one thing for you in Planner. Recurring tasks are supposedly due this month. Let's see if that actually holds true. As we mentioned in the upfront, a lot of stuff was announced over the last couple of weeks while we've been away. Namely, Microsoft has introduced 2 new umbrella brands for some of its key collections of features. Microsoft Purview was announced in May and consolidates much of the security and compliance features available in Microsoft 365. And Microsoft Entra is the new brand for identity and access, and it's going to does include Azure Active Directory, permissions management, and verified ID, which is this really interesting attempt by Microsoft to create a sort of central identity verification service for the private sector. The announcement blog posts for both of these items are linked in the show notes. And to round things out, as we mentioned, Microsoft Build, the developer conference, ran from May 24th to 26th, and there were a ton of Microsoft 365 updates worth noting. Despite it being a developer-focused conference, there are a ton of consumer-facing impacts. The ability to build your own loop components using adaptive cards was announced as a private preview feature, and it's coming this month. The ability to live share experiences for Teams meetings, which was initially demoed with playing a video that anyone in the meeting can control, will be a feature set for app developers and Teams. Hopefully, we'll see this built into more things. We already have it for PowerPoint Live and Whiteboard, but the more the merrier. Microsoft Power Pages will be an offshoot of Power Apps Portals as a public-facing website builder. It's likely not meant to compete with the likes of WordPress. In fact, Microsoft has gone so far as to say it's not intended to compete with the likes of WordPress, more so to provide management of pages and especially apps and forms that will support business processes that incorporate external people. We can't wait to see the finalized licensing schema, since it's only going to make Power Platform licensing even more fun. Complicated. Power Platform also got an official icon without any explicit mention. So now you don't have to default to the Power Apps logo as a representative of the whole platform. Don't act like you haven't. The Microsoft Build Book of News has all the major announcements, including the ones we just talked about, and you'll be able to find all of that in the show notes.
That was the news.
That was the news.
It was a lot. All right.
So, as we mentioned at the upfront, there was definitely a lot of team stuff. There was definitely a lot of Power Platform stuff. We're not going to cover it all here because you're going to be covering Teams next week. Very exciting stuff. And I will be covering a bunch of exciting stuff in the Power Platform Showcase, all part of our new format at the end of this month. That said, what jumped out at you, Matt?
Well, let's get into the real item that we probably both want to talk about, which is the Apple Worldwide Developer Conference today, right? That's really what matters to us, to our audience.
Have already downloaded.
Oh my God, you have, you nerd, you nerd. I will wait till the autumn. Thank you very much. Yeah. So what stood out to me? So first off, I want to say real quick, if you've never looked at the Book of News, which is a website template kind of thing that Microsoft has been putting out for, I think it's been like a year now, for Build and Ignite. Definitely look at that because it is really, really, really good. It is just an amazing advancement in collecting the information into a one-stop shop compared to the BC before COVID timeframes, and they've done a really nice job making this stuff available to us. So if you haven't looked at that yet for Microsoft Build, even if you're not a developer like me, there are definitely things in there that matter. And I think, you'll have plenty of time to talk about in our upcoming Power Platform episode, but I think the Power Pages thing was kind of notable. I'm really curious to see if it's going to, I know they said it's not a WordPress competitor, but even like a Webflow competitor kind of, where it's really meant to be sort of an out of the box and code-free environment would be pretty cool to see. But yeah,
there were some really interesting things that I saw on Twitter about Power Pages, and it was because there's this big open question as soon as you announce it is, what does this mean for Power Apps Portals? And the way I saw it described, I want to say it was David Warner, who we had in the show a couple weeks ago, who said that it was Power Apps Portals is to Power Pages what SharePoint Classic is to the modern SharePoint experience. And I thought that was a really, really good way of drawing kind of a line, at least for those of us who have been in the space for, I want to say a couple years, more than a few years.
Yeah.
Because that was such a huge leap in terms of usability, in terms of accessibility in the SharePoint space. So to draw that kind of a comparison, I'm really, really excited to actually get my hands on it. And the second thing that I wanted to make mention of has just fallen out of my head, and so I'm going to throw it back to you.
So the other things that kind of stood out to me were these new umbrella brands. And you know me, I can't stand Microsoft Viva as a brand. It is just a repackaging of existing items to sell to a different audience that isn't the IT group. And I'm not saying it because I think that everybody should always go through IT. It's just like you're just putting a different sticker on the same thing. So this Entra and Purview thing. So Purview came out, I think it was in late April, but I think we haven't even talked a whole lot about it, which is why I included it in today's listing. Boy, that the day they mentioned that or announced that brand out of nowhere, all of the compliance portals got updated to be Microsoft Purview, and that includes in government clouds. So the new names for everything, we had just gone from Microsoft Cloud App Security to Microsoft Defender for Cloud Apps, like that transition had just happened, right? And now we're doing it again. So if you haven't looked at that yet, you're going to want to take a look. Let me actually share my screen here. I should have done this prior. I apologize for but just
while
the
you're
name.
Pulling it up, I'll just remark that my running theory is that after all the reorgs that have been happening internally in Microsoft, somebody has gotten really bitter and decided to take it out on the customers.
Right.
They're like, if we have to deal with this,
I'll show them.
To
But I think the notable things in here are, looking at what of some of these things, in the past. So O365 DLP is now Microsoft Purview DLP. Microsoft Information Protection, which used to be Azure Information Protection, and there's actually still some places where it still is AIP, as in like the AIP client, is now Microsoft Purview Information Protection. So we're adding at least one word to every single name of every single security compliance feature out there. It's good to know and to see this graphic though on their article, their blog post, and this is again in our show notes right now, to see what those one-to-one comparisons are, because some of these have some weirdly different names, and it's important to know what you're playing around with.
Yeah, somebody said this on Twitter the other day, and it was something to the effect of, just because you've decided to come up with this like common umbrella overarching brand does not suddenly make all of this make any more sense than it did yesterday. Like, just because you now have a pretty consistent prefix isn't going to make the relationships between all of these things any more intuitive. It's certainly not going to make licensing any better.
I was just going to say, nor does it simplify licensing in any way.
And I think at a certain point, we're really testing the limits of just how much customers are paying attention, and two, for those that are, the frustration that this engenders of like, this continues to be just rearranging chairs. It's just frustrating, because trying to calm down.
The silence is speaking words. It's many, many words.
Our mutual friend Erica Tully said something interesting, which is that Microsoft has data that shows that for umbrella brands that don't serve any function, customers overwhelmingly prefer these kind of vague, ambiguous things like Viva and Entra and Purview, and for actual tangible products, they prefer functional names.
Yeah.
And so this is just us continuing to see that progression. This is where our energy is.
I hate the fact that if they have the data and the data says that, I'm a data guy, and like, yeah, you're making the right decision, but it's just from the practical recipient perspective here, where you're already spraying a fire hose at me constantly anyway. And I like to call that fire hose the job security fire hose, but still, like, you don't have to turn it up to 10. It was good enough at 7.5, like I'm perfectly happy with that. But
I am awash in job security right now.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So Entra is the other one. I don't know where Entra comes from. I assume it means it's sort of a cutoff of the word entrance, or to enter, as in like identity, to log in. I assume that's where that's coming from. At least Purview is an English word, but then again, I guess I have to be consistent about my my critiques here, because I typically will complain about standard English vernacular words being stolen and made into brands by Microsoft, and this is definitely
pick
not
one.
that. Right?
Pick a
yes.
side.
Viva. We got to dip deep into the into Espanol there, but this is the blog post here for the introduction, and the big thing here is this little graphic they have talking about what it is made up of. So if you haven't kind of dived into this a little bit, now's the time to do it for your own sake, to understand what these things are, especially if it has a licensing implication for you. So yeah,
I think Ermine's got something. We might be onto something here that, much like IP addresses, we were running out of acronyms. The Microsoft had to add more characters to the names.
Oh, that is a beautifully geeky thing to point out. That's great.
You're probably not far off.
Yeah. Right.
Now I'm really excited. I want to come back to Power Pages for just a split second here. And again, we're going to talk about this at the tail end of the month here. But I'm really excited for what this could potentially be, because, for organizations like mine, this idea of, because for Power Apps, being able to build something that was useful for internal folks has always been one of its huge value props. And I love that about being able to build kind of visual user experience processes that you can build, like you can run the business on.
Yeah.
But one of the big barriers has always been, once you start to try and turn your attention towards external partners. And so like my organization, whose whole purpose of being is working with external partners, that's always been a huge, and you can't really explain to the average end user, oh, like, hey, this really rich, beautiful thing that we built can only be used internally. And so I'm excited to see what this means kind of for that experience, if that's going to be some mechanism through which we can expose some of those experiences to our external partners. Just empowering a little bit more of that is huge.
Yep.
So I'll be interested to see. Did you catch anything about where that's landing on the government side of things? I'll admit I wasn't paying too close attention on that.
I'm actually not even sure if Power Apps portals are even available in the government tenants yet. I'd have to check that one.
Yeah, I'll have to double check too.
There's definitely a delay to getting stuff in the government tenants.
Yeah. But yeah, more to come on this. This is our first stab at the new format here, and so I'll hesitate to put any more salt on the meal that we've just served up, this hot dish that we've served.
But a lot happened, and we took a few weeks off for various vacations, holidays here in the U.S. But Build happened. These two major brand announcements happened, and a couple key things popped up on the roadmap. I will say the roadmap is getting a little bit annoying in that a lot of things are popping up the same month that they're due. So this
yeah, I've noticed that too.
Yeah, it's like June 3rd. Yeah, we're gonna have this thing available by the end of the month, and it's like, gee, thanks, appreciate the heads up. Not that I'm complaining that it's on the roadmap. Yeah, right. But it would be nice to at least have something ahead of time by a month or two.
A really great point here, that it gets harder and harder to talk about change when the change dates keep getting pushed out. And so Microsoft's solution is, of course, to tell us 2 days before it drops.
Exactly. Yeah. But yeah, even like the Outlook stuff, that's finally coming. With respect,
I'm excited for the bookings feature, the personal bookings functionality.
So I'm very curious to see how that and the updated Find Time, because Find Time is something you have to install at a user level.
And it's hard to explain to people that it's native functionality that isn't native. Like it's a Microsoft product that you have to go seek out.
Yeah, exactly. Which I can't stand, but it's such an easy way to get to also meet your global cybersecurity groups, itchiness. They're like, oh, this is already within the cloud. It's good. It's all part of that process anyway. I don't know why they're changing the name of it. I think the name is great, actually.
No, I'm glad they're changing it. I disagree. I thought Find Time was a confusing name. I thought that it put too much weight, and we've complained about this before. I'm surprised you're on that side of the fence. Not every feature needs a brand name. Meeting polls is a more than sufficient description of what it does. It didn't need to be branded. And so I'm glad that it's coming in as a native feature. I'm glad they're dropping the brand. I think this is a win all across the board.
All right. You make strong points. I don't necessarily agree with all of them, but they are strong.
Well, you're wrong.
Right. Strong and wrong. But yeah, I think that's going to be great. A very good. I don't know why it took so long though to get these things in that format. Or that's not that format, but like Find Time's been around for years at this point. Bookings itself has been around for years at this point. Making it into a
Yeah.
Calendly competitor, I feel like both of these things were obvious things that should have been, bopped into these apps 5 years ago.
Yeah, I would agree with you. I mean, bookings, that always felt like a natural extension of what bookings was supposed to be. And for anybody who's not used Calendly, Calendly is a really great service. Calendly.com, you connect your Outlook calendar to it, you can connect your personal calendar to it, and it essentially presents this really rich, fairly simple calendar experience where people can pick a date, pick a time, and drop time directly onto your calendar, and they can see their availability if they've got a Calendly account. So it'll actually even cross-reference against theirs. So you can just very quickly, both of you are signed in, both of you are using accounts, figure out what times are mutually available. And sure, Outlook's got that functionality, but to be able to then turn and share that externally is a boon. And I've tried to use, I don't know if you've ever tried to use bookings in its current state as a
Yeah, I
Calendly
haven't.
competitor.
Not that way. No.
It's not a good experience. And
Yeah.
right now, I'll be interested to see if this is still the case, but right now, when you create a bookings page, it creates a completely separate exchange object,
Ugh.
which if anybody on the IT side of things is paying attention to and going, I didn't create that, and they delete
Right.
it, your bookings page just breaks. In fact, I think that happened to Erica Telly a year or two ago. I did not know that Find Time was a garage project.
Yeah, I was aware of that. It's just
I did not know
it
that.
became popular, which is a good thing because it deserves to be popular. But yeah, it's just the the issue with the Calendly is that it's a non-starter for organizations who have a strong cybersecurity mentality because
Yeah, if you can't do the sign in with.
right, you're giving serious access to some third-party app that has, if you're paying what, $5, I don't know what it is, but it's going to be a reasonably small amount of money per person. Like they don't have a whole lot of vested interest to absolutely ensure that they are protecting your data because heaven forbid they lose,
Sure.
somebody at $7 a month or whatever.
Hermine says something as well. Asks, does the personal bookings mean that the end users need to learn something new and different to manage their availability? And the short answer is no. They're not going to need to learn anything different. I mean, the same schedule assistant functionality remains the case. End users will need to understand that certain availability types, you like book an all day event to let's like focus time. You'll need to make sure you set that as like busy or out of the office in order to actually protect that time. That's going to be something the end user is going to need to understand that I forget what they call it, the view as, set as, whatever the like busyness level is.
Yeah.
They'll need to understand what that is, which is not something that all users pay attention to. But in terms of just how people already book time with each other, like those options all still remain available. But this will, in theory, give you a nice shiny link that you can drop into your signature, or you can send in a Teams chat or a Slack message or a Facebook DM or whatever. And people will be able to see a calendar of your live availability, which I think is great. It's just another way to do it.
But so this is a very good example though, I think. And to her, the base of her question, the point of it, yeah, there's going to be something that people are going to have to learn or at least hold themselves more accountable. Because if you have a publicly facing calendar and you don't hold yourself accountable to your work hours, like when was the last time you changed your work hours in Outlook? Like I haven't changed it since the first time I set them up, right? So in theory,
I immediately change it.
well, I don't mean like I'm booked. I mean like if my work hours are
sure.
8 to 5:30, right? Like
Yeah.
that means that somebody can't book me before 8 or after 5:30. But if I'm not coming in until, I don't know, let's say like my Monday, I have a Monday, Wednesday schedule and a Tuesday, Thursday schedule, and my Fridays are weird or whatever. You have to make sure you do that. And if you ever change
Sure.
that, you have to make sure you do that too, which is one reason I was getting bad memories of the Cortana virtual assistant schedule that's now $10 a month. And it also
$10 a month.
It's also making me wonder whether or not these features are going to be native plus
Shut
or
up. Don't give them ideas.
I know. But that was something where you could only trust that AI, that assistant, to do the right thing if you had set up your times correctly. Because if you didn't set up your times correctly, it's not the virtual assistant's fault for scheduling a call at 6:30 p.m. when you get off work at 4:30, right? But it also brings up the question of, well, for, let's say, you're on the West Coast and I work with you on a regular basis and people in Europe on a regular basis, right? So I'm in the middle there. You're 3 hours behind, they're 6 hours ahead. So in certain situations, yeah, I will work. I will. You'd have to start early to be on a call with me with people from Europe so that they could be at the end of their day. You'd be at the beginning of your day or earlier, and I'd probably be in the middle. But like, the virtual assistant isn't going to know that, right? That, oh yeah, this is an exception to the rule because this is a situation where time zones are just the bane of everybody's existence, and you need to be able to work with
compromises.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm kind of curious to see how that's, because if people do want this benefit, this feature set, which they do, definitely, you got to learn, you got to do something, right? You have to have a little bit of control set up, which there's always those things where people's like, I just want it to work. And it's like, right, but you're coming in here with a lot of requirements when you think about it. Like,
right. I want it to just work. Also, I have a CVS receipt of rules. I will say that Calendly solves that pretty well in that it allows you to create dedicated links for kind of meeting types. And so, for example, like I have a quick meeting event type. And so that's got its own dedicated link that I share. And those, anybody who clicks on that link, they can only see a rolling availability of the next 7 business days. And it's only between 10 a.m. and 3 p.m. my time. And every other Friday, which is my schedule, is not available.
Yeah.
And things like that. So I'm hopeful that Bookings is going to take that component of it, which is going to allow you to kind of have like the curated external, like, maybe this is like my office hours link and it only shows Tuesdays and Wednesdays between 10 a.m. and 1 p.m. as an example.
So
I'm
that's
hoping
clever.
That's
yeah,
what
I didn't. So that's almost like a view,
exactly.
individual views of your Calendly calendar. But yeah, I'm going to throw a bet out there and say that that's probably not going to be what they roll out.
Shut up.
It's probably going to be a good.
Nancy.
It's going to be a good, solid 65% solution, just like Planner is, or some of the other.
Good enough.
Right? Good enough is good enough.
Yeah, you're probably right. Katrina asks, could payment be taken through Bookings? So if you pay for Microsoft 365 in any capacity right now, and you've got access to Booking, if you pay for a plan that's got access to Bookings, you can use Bookings today to collect payments, which is great. Super useful. Yeah.
Like I could set it up with like have Apple Pay and
I don't think it does Apple Pay. Actually, I got to double check that. Yeah, but you can accept payments because like the example they give every single time. I'm gonna Bookings, Microsoft.com. The example is always hairdressers.
Yes, it's always hairdressers. Yes, exactly right.
Office.com in case anybody is checking on this after.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, like the example is always hairdressers. So like in that context, like you book an appointment, you pay for the appointment. I don't know if that's going to be available through the personal one. I think that this is probably going to be like Bookings Lite, which unfortunately is probably exactly what Matt is saying here.
Yeah.
I'm
a realist. I have to set my standards so that or my expectations so that I can hope for the best, but be ready for what's actually coming.
Ready for disappointment. And then lastly here, people will also need to book time to work on tasks, or a bookings request may take time out of your calendar that you planned to use for completing tasks. You're 100% right. And this is where I'll also highlight another really great Calendly feature, which is that you can set buffer between events. So if something's on your calendar, it won't let you, like if you turn this setting on, it won't let you immediately book after events. Like you could have like 30 minutes or an hour or something like that.
So on that note, very short rant on scheduling things. Now that Outlook has had it for a while, that you can put in a location and it can actually search for an address and you can indicate the address. Why is it that I still have to schedule an appointment for my doctor, doctor's appointment, let's say, or dentist? If that's at 8:30, I still have to schedule that appointment for like the half hour prior and say dentist at 8 a.m., but started at 7:30 because that's how long it takes me. Why doesn't any calendaring solution, including Gmail, I believe, or Google Cal, automatically look at the location and say, well, typically you come from this location. That's a 30-minute drive time. I'm going to book your calendar for 30 minutes prior to that. Why is that not a thing yet?
Fantastical, which is a calendaring service that is made by a company called Flexibits. It's a Apple platform focused one. So sorry, Android, Windows users. But they do have travel functionality built into it. And you can actually just check a box and it'll say block off travel time. And you can choose between transit, driving. It should be more standard functionality. I agree with you.
And like you can get those time-based reminders now where it's like, remind me for this meeting when I'm supposed to leave, or 10 minutes prior to when I'm supposed to leave based on the traffic patterns, which like, yeah, duh, obviously that should be a thing. And it is, but the actual booking of it, like somebody can book me up until the actual time of that appointment when that appointment starts, but I have to travel to it. I don't understand why that's not a thing yet. And like, I don't know, maybe I'm expecting too much in 2022, but like Find Time now becoming native, bookings having a Calendly interface, becoming an actual thing. Like, I can't believe that stuff is going to be coming after a $10 a month virtual assistant Cortana that can never come up to that value, first off. And second, how many people actually use it, right? Like, I don't know. Priorities are a little off from what I would have probably.
If I were a betting person, I would say that the functionality you're describing is going to be a fast follow here, because especially as we start returning to the office, for many of us anyways, travel time is going to become something that has to be accommodated for on an ad hoc basis in a way that organizationally we've never had to concern ourselves with.
Yeah.
So for people who, work from home typically, but might come into the office for a meeting, like travel time is going to be something that's going to need to be accommodated for. And I think if there's anything we've learned over these last 2 years, it's been that these companies and these product managers and these engineers make better products when they suffer through the same problems we do. It's why Teams got better over the last 2 years. It's why why Find Time suddenly is becoming a native feature. These things are now something that they're having to deal with and be frustrated by in the same way that we are. And so with that context, I would bet money that the travel time functionality is a fast follow that we'll see within the next, I'm going to say, year.
Yeah, let's hope. The fact that Google Cal hasn't done it either is the thing that makes me, be not so thrilled with the potential for that being a thing.
I'll just walk down the road and let them know.
You should. I mean, just kick on the door and say, "Hey, it would be nice
if there's anything we've seen, it's if Google does it, Microsoft will do it. Because the RSVP in Office, Google did that like 2 months before Microsoft is like, oh yeah, we're also doing that.
Right. Yeah, that's a smart idea. We should really consider that. That's not.
We really need to play them against each other a little bit more. So
the three of them, even get Apple in there with iCloud and stuff, and just market economy, competition, yada yada yada, American dream, blah 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 blah.
Monopolies against monopolies. That's what we're playing.
Yes. Perfect.
Well, there's some exciting stuff here, and obviously there's more to come. Next week, Matt, you're going to be talking about Teams. You're excited about that, I assume?
I'm always pumped about Teams.
Good answer. And then
I'm always pumped to talk to you about Teams, since you just never use it. So I'm just trying to propagandize to you, right?
And then we talked about it on the upfront, but we'll touch on it one last time here. Week 3, we've got a special guest. I'm really excited about this guest. Matt, I know you're really excited. We just got an email. We confirmed we're locked in. And then at the end of the month, we'll be talking about the Power Platform. I'll be talking about Power Pages, among other things that were announced at Build. I'm really excited about that.
Sounds good. All right. Well, I think that about does it. Thank you, everybody, so much for watching. As always, a like and subscribe, much appreciated. Leave a comment below to keep that discussion going, and keep an eye out for when we post the live streams ahead of time. You are able to comment on those ahead of time as well. And Sean, thanks so much for joining me this week, and I can't wait to hang out with you and everybody else again next week.